A man with a memory worse than a goldfish uses tattoos as his memory aids to try and find out who clapped his wife. This one's pretty complicated, so pay attention. So in the first scene, there's this guy holding a photo and watching it develop. I think it's those ancient kinds of photos that you take, and then you have to fan the film so the photo can develop. Boomer moment. Everything looks like it's going in reverse motion though. Apparently our main character has just clapped a man in the head, but I guess we're about to find out what led us to this moment. First thing you need to know is that the movie has two sequences. There's a black and white sequence of scenes that's in chronological order, and then there's the colored sequence that's in reverse chronological order. Our character seems to have some form of memory issue because when he's thinking to himself, he seems not to know where exactly he is and how long he's been there. This is about as confusing as Christopher Nolan movies get. Strap in. Anyway, we find out that our main character's name is Leonard Shelby. In the next scene, he's downstairs at the reception of the motel when some cheery guy, the guy he clapped at the beginning of the movie, comes looking for him. They seem to have been friends because there's some kind of playful rapport between the two. So why exactly is this guy worthy of death? We're about to find out. Leonard and his friend drive down together to some abandoned building. I guess Leonard is looking for someone, judging by his actions and statements. Anyway, something to kind of just hold somewhere in your mind when watching this movie is that Leonard has his complex system of photos, tattoos, and notes to help him remember. Like I said, some sort of memory issue going on here. Or should I say, skill issue. So when Leonard gets to the building, he digs into his pocket and finds his picture of our soon-to-be dead guy. On the photo, Leonard has scribbled something about the guy being a liar and that he should not believe, and instead, make sure he claps the guy. So slowly, he takes out his gun, and that's when we find out that whoever this soon-to-be dead guy, aka Teddy, is, he did something really bad to Leonard's wife, and now Leonard is going to make him pay. Anyway, we're back to the black and white scene. Here, Leonard is explaining the nature of his memory problem. He knows who he is and pretty much everything there is to know about himself. However, he has zero short-term memories. I mean, talk to him for too long and he's going to forget who the heck you are and why you're talking to him in the first place. And that's why he has to write notes and come up with this delicate system to make sure that his notes don't get all mixed up, turning him into a psycho. Having the kind of memory problem Leonard has is a tad bit inconvenient. You've got to know your own handwriting like crazy well, and you've got to write things in the right places. And you can never let people write for you, because people are the worst, and some of them just want to see you rip in peace. To give you some insight into his system, just in case you ever get interrograde memory loss. So, important information goes to the body, so you don't forget or throw it away. Then close with several pockets, so that you can keep notes and photos compartmentalized. It's all about systems, baby. That said, we see Leonard writing that note to himself to not believe Teddy on the picture. We still don't know why, though. After Leonard leaves his room, he goes down to the motel's front desk and has his conversation with the guy there. A conversation that he has had a zillion times but can't seem to remember. Anyway, he asks the man at the reception to let him know when Teddy shows up, and just as they say, when you speak at the devil, he does what? He shows up. The next scene, colored now. Leonard is at the bathroom in a diner, where he apparently just finished meeting up with someone. He picks up a package and goes from there to a place called the Discount Inn, the motel where he's staying. When he gets to his room, he pins the picture along with that of his wife in his car on his crazy board. He opens up the package, which is marked for Leonard from Natalie. That's when we learn Teddy is actually John Edward Gamel. He finds out his so-called friend Teddy has been lying to him, confirmed by the fact that Leonard already wrote on the back of the photo of Teddy McJohn G not to believe his lies. By the way, I'm just going to call him Teddy McJohn G going forward. Anyway, after Leonard's discovery, Teddy McJohn G calls and tells Leonard that he's coming. Leonard is so chill, so he's like, cool, cool, cool. It's still not clear that Teddy McJohn G is the guy he's after. The only thing we know so far is that Teddy McJohn G has been lying to Leonard. When Leonard checks his hand, he finds that he's written 4 important facts about the guy he's after. The guy he's after is male. Yes, you have to clarify that these days. And white. His first name starts with J, as in John or James, and G, as in who knows, maybe Gamel. Leonard's guy is also a substance dealer, and his license plate is SG137IU, features that perfectly match those of Teddy McJohn G. So Leonard calls it. This is the guy he's been looking for, which is why he makes the note on the photo to clap him. I hope this does not turn out to be a mistake, because I mean many unknowns in this thing. But then again, a John G clapped and clapped his wife. Interpret that however you want. I don't expect that he'd be particularly reasonable. Anyway, it's back to the black and white scene. This time he's talking to someone about how he's surviving and making things work even with his memory issues. In the colored sequence that follows, we find out what brought him to the diner in the first place. There's a woman, Natalie, who has information for him. The package that contained John G's information and all, and the address of the house where Leonard murdered John G in the beginning. Apparently, he had given her a license plate number to investigate for him, and she wanted to return a favor, so she helped him. Again, we switch back to the monochrome scene, and that's when we find out that Leonard used to be an investigator. It was in the course of work that he met Sammy Jenkins. The Sammy Jenkins he tells himself to remember through the tattoo on his hand. The next colored scene takes us to a time before he got the package from Natalie, when he met with Teddy. In their conversation, Teddy seems to be be trying to dissuade Leonard from finding John G. Talking about, your notes are unreliable. Of course they're unreliable. Of course he would say that. So we're back to the black and white scene where Leonard is telling us the story of Sammy Jenkins, a 50-year-old semi-retired accountant. He had a similar memory problem like Leonard, interrograde memory loss, but a lot worse. Mans couldn't remember anything longer than 2 minutes tops. Like Leonard though, he could remember everything he knew before his accident. He just had to make sure he was focused. Tried everything to get cured, but nothing worked. And medical bills were piling up, which meant insurance. So they sent Leonard to investigate, which was how he met Sammy and his wife. When Leonard meets Sammy though, he has suspicions. Okay, we're back to the time before the lunch meeting with Teddy. This time he wakes up in Natalie's bed. I guess interrograde memory loss doesn't stop you from getting freaky. If only I could get a girl with amnesia. You know, walk away the next morning, no consequences. Anyway, to continue Sammy's story, Leonard explains that he was somewhat suspicious of Sammy, so he ordered some tests. But before we get to the revelation from that, it's time to go further back in time to find out what favor Natalie was returning with the license plate number thing. Apparently, Leonard helped Natalie take care of some dude named Dodd. Natalie claims he did it of his own volition after learning that Dodd hit Natalie. Leonard, on the other hand, is not buying that and is convinced someone is trying to get him to kill the wrong guy. He eventually calms down though, after Natalie goes all soft on him. Then she tells him about someone she lost too, clapped by a certain Teddy, offering to help Leonard find the guy that clapped and clapped his wife. She looks like she's falling in love too. Nice. Lamal. Alright, you know what it's time for now. Black and white scene. So Sammy's story continues. Through the series of tests Leonard orders, he comes to the conclusion that Sammy's memory loss issue was psychological rather than physical. So the insurance company denies Sammy's claims, and Sam and his wife have to come up with the bills, while Leonard gets celebrated with a promotion. We're now back to color and a time before he went to Natalie's. Leonard wakes up in some motel room with a guy muffled in his wardrobe. Just then, Ted McJohn G comes knocking on the door. Apparently, Leonard called him because of the situation with the guy in the wardrobe. The guy happens to be Dodd from Natalie. They don't kill him though, just threaten him and make him disappear, after which Leonard drives to see Natalie, the scene we watched last. Continuing Sammy's story, the movie switches back to black and white scenes. The condition with Sammy is creating tension in his marriage, and his wife has just about had it, especially now that Leonard has suggested that it was all in Sammy's head. Alright, now we're taken to the scene where Leonard meets Dodd. This time he's in a bathroom with a bottle of grape juice in his hand, but he's sober. While in the shower, Dodd comes into the bathroom and he clubbers the guy with the bottle before he can say jack. He checks Dodd's stuff and finds some masking tape and a gun. Guess Dodd was a piece of crap anyway. So Leonard ties Dodd up and chucks him in the wardrobe, after which he calls Teddy. In the next black and white sequence, whoever Leonard is talking with over the phone has to go, and so he hangs up the call. In the colored sequence, we are taken through the chase that takes Leonard to Dodd's room. Going further back, we find out that Dodd had been chasing Leonard, trying to grab him, but the scene before that is particularly moving, as we see Leonard burning some of his wife's stuff at a cemetery, his attempt to forget who she is. But considering that he'll forget he even did that within the hour, not sure that's helping. He does get flashes of his wife from the horrible accident of when she was killed though, but nothing else that's concrete. Over in the black and white sequence, Leonard is finding some confusing evidence. His next tattoo is supposed to say, access to substances, but the police report paints Leonard's guy as a desperate addict who broke into Leonard's house to get some money to buy salt so he could eat it with his nose. But that didn't make sense to Leonard because a huge stash of substances was found in John G's car. The person Leonard is talking to then makes the puzzle fit. John G is a dealer. Meanwhile, we learn how Leonard got into Discount Inn. Apparently he'd been staying with Natalie, but Teddy McJohn G didn't think it was a great idea because he's convinced Natalie is bad news. Teddy McJohn G informs Leonard that Natalie and her boyfriend are into substances and advises him to check into a motel, which is what he does. But Teddy also tells him something curious about how Leonard doesn't know who he is, at least not since the incident. Whatever the case, Leonard checks the back of the photo of Teddy that he has and finds out that he had scribbled on the note that he shouldn't believe his lies, so he discards Teddy's advice. But now there's some problem in the black and white world, because as Leonard continues the story of Sammy, he stumbles on one of his tattoos on his arm that tells him never to answer his phone. When he asks who's on the phone with him though, the call immediately hangs up, and that's when he calls the front desk, instructing the guy there to make sure no call comes through for him anymore. In the next scene, we find out some backstory on Natalie and Dodd. Like Teddy said, Dodd is into substances and Natalie works for him. Actually, Natalie seems to be a psychopathic freak, a la Gone Girl. It's not yet clear what exactly she wants with Leonard, but so far, we know that Leonard stayed with her for a couple of days before moving to Discount Inn. When they first get to her house, Leonard tells her about his mission to find the guy who clapped his wife. He also gives us the first full flashback into how his wife was clapped. A couple of guys barged into their home. One clapped his wife and then clapped her. The other guy hit him from behind and pushed his head into the mirror, the impact of which causes memory loss. He goes further to explain to Natalie that the police didn't believe that there were two men at the scene, because obviously, Leonard has brain damage, so his statement was considered unreliable. This is why he's looking for the killer himself. But it gets crazy because we also find out that maybe Teddy was right after all. Natalie turns out to be a real female dog, if you know what I mean. Apparently she has some score to settle with the so-called Dodd, so she gets Leonard to do her dirty work by saying all these super hurtful things to Leonard to get him angry. This makes Leonard hit her, especially because she insults his late wife continuously, but then she steps out for a while, giving Leonard a couple of minutes to forget what happened, and then when she comes back, she tells Leonard that she was hit by Dodd. Sure enough, Leonard wants to help her, so he gets Dodd's name and address and plots his move to take him out. But thank God he doesn't. But how exactly did Leonard meet Natalie? We'll get to that in a bit. Let's let Leonard finish the story of Sammy and his wife. As we found out earlier, Sammy's illness was putting a strain on his marriage. His wife, thinking it was a mental issue, courtesy of Leonard, kept coming up with new tricks to force Sammy to snap out of it, but he just never could. One day, Sammy's wife goes to Leonard and asks for his sincere opinion on what he thought about her husband's condition. Leonard said he believed it was mental. She wants to be sure once and for all, so she puts Leonard to the test. She's diabetic and needs to take her shot at specific times. Since Sammy learned how to do that before his accident, he still used to give her the injections even after the accident. On that fateful day, Sammy's wife told him that it was time for her shot, but to test him, she kept taking the time back and telling him to come give her shot again and again. She knew her husband loved her and felt like this would finally cause him to break, but he didn't. Instead, he kept giving her shot each time she asked until she overdosed and slipped into a coma she couldn't recover from. Congratulations, you played yourself. Anyway, back to Natalie and how she and Leonard met. So Natalie has his boyfriend, Jimmy Grants, and he's a dealer. Natalie's a bartender, and so her boyfriend deals using her bar as a front. According to what Teddy tells Leonard, the police are after Jimmy Grants and somehow Leonard is involved, which is why they've been calling Leonard in his motel room. Teddy wants Leonard to run away and get a new identity. However, Leonard checks his picture of Teddy on which he had already made the note to not trust him, so he collects the bag of clothes and stuff Teddy gives him to change into, but he doesn't change into them. Instead, he finds his coaster in his pocket that has a note from Natalie from before, telling him to come by the bar later, so he drives down. Now here's the crazy thing. When Leonard gets to the bar, he meets Natalie outside where she's throwing stuff into the dumpster. When Natalie sees the car, she assumes it's her boyfriend Jimmy, but then when she looks into the car, she discovers that it's not him. That makes me wonder, could it be that the note Leonard found was actually for Jimmy? Maybe the car and clothes were actually for Jimmy. I mean, man's driving a Jag, not exactly a common car. Anyway, in the black and white sequence, we finally found out that the cop Leonard has been talking to is Teddy McJohn G, or Officer Gamel, but he tells Leonard to call him Teddy because he's undercover. Apparently, Leonard is supposed to go and take down Jimmy Grants, so Teddy gives directions to an abandoned building, supposedly where Jimmy Grants is, and then leaves. When he gets to the abandoned building, Jimmy Grants shows up. Apparently, Teddy had set Jimmy up because when Jimmy shows up, he asks for Teddy like they had an appointment scheduled. As arranged, Leonard claps Jimmy, takes a photo of him, and changes into his clothes, which explains how he found the note from Natalie and why Natalie was being psychotic to him. He clapped her boyfriend. Now, one curious thing though, before Jimmy finally gives up the ghost, he mentions Sammy, and that's when it hits him. Something's off. The dead man shouldn't know about Sammy. At about that time, Teddy shows up. When Leonard meets him outside, he pretends like he's forgotten who Teddy is. However, he had checked his photos just before Teddy entered the building, so he could remember who Teddy is. Now Teddy thinks Leonard has forgotten who he is, so he capitalizes on that, but Leonard wouldn't be fooled. So he pressures Teddy into telling him what the heck is going on. Teddy then unravels the entire story to Leonard, and indirectly to us. Apparently, the story of Sammy Jenkins is the story of Leonard, which he has tried to repress. His wife was a diabetic, and she was actually clapped, but she wasn't killed. She survived, and she didn't believe Leonard had the condition he claimed to have. She believed she could get him to shake off whatever was wrong with him, which was why she kept asking for shot after shot of insulin, hoping that the realization of the fact that he was clapping her would make him snap out of it. But since he genuinely couldn't remember, he doesn't stop himself and his wife dies due to death. Teddy also explains that he was the police officer assigned to Leonard's case, and that together they had caught and clapped Leonard's wife's clappist. Teddy even showed Leonard a picture that he took of Leonard after they caught the John G that clapped his wife. But the issue was Leonard could never remember catching his wife's clappist. So Teddy started to give him new John G's to clap, indirectly giving Leonard a sense of purpose. When Leonard finds out this truth from Teddy, he decides to put an end to the whole thing. So he scribbles on the back of Teddy's picture to not believe his lies. He then makes a note to tattoo Teddy's license plate next, so that after he forgets, he will mistake Teddy for John G and clap him. And so that explains the first scene where we see Leonard shoot Teddy dead in the abandoned building. So yeah, just like that, the movie ends with Leonard going to the tattoo parlor. Yet another head scratcher from our beloved Christopher Nolan. More of the story? Don't forget to subscribe.